Imagine this. You wake up each morning with a cloud hanging over your head. Not because of any specific problem. It's something deeper, something that follows you like a shadow. You feel it in your chest, that tight knot of what-ifs and endless possibilities. You try to push through, to focus on the tasks at hand, but your mind keeps circling back. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if something terrible happens that I didn't see coming? By the time you get to work, your energy is spent. You're exhausted before noon. And yet, the cycle continues. This, my friend, is the burden of worry, and you are not alone. Today, we're going to unravel it together. Worry is more than just a passing thought. It's a relentless storm that steals your peace, your time, and your ability to live fully. It whispers to you when you're trying to sleep, interrupts you when you're trying to connect with others, and turns simple decisions into paralyzing dilemmas. But here's the truth we must confront. Worry is not a sign of intelligence or responsibility. It's a thief. It steals your freedom, masquerading as preparation but leaving you drained and defeated. Let me share a story that will make this real. There's a woman named Alex who once told me about her daily battle with worry. Every morning, before even getting out of bed, she'd mentally rehearse her worst-case scenarios. What if her son caught the flu during a school play? What if her business partner betrayed her? What if something happened to her aging father? She'd go through her day on autopilot, constantly checking her phone, rereading messages, and double-checking locks and appliances. Her productivity plummeted. Her relationships suffered. She was a tornado of stress, stuck in a hamster wheel. One day, she broke down, not because of any disaster, but because she was desperate to feel present, to stop carrying the weight of imaginary catastrophes. Your story might not mirror hers exactly, but if you've ever felt paralyzed by fear or trapped by negative thoughts, you understand what I'm talking about. Worry thrives in the gaps of our lives. It latches onto our insecurities, magnifies them, and convinces us we're not enough. It says you can't handle the future, so you might as well live in the anxiety of it. But this isn't a fixed condition. It's a pattern, one you can learn to recognize and rewrite. Let's dig into why worry persists. First, the brain is wired for survival. When it senses a threat, real or imagined, it activates the fight-or-flight response, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. This system kept our ancestors alive when they faced physical dangers like predators. But today, the majority of our threats are abstract, self-generated, and entirely within our control. When we worry, we're tricking our body into believing we're constantly under attack. The result? Chronic stress, which undermines focus, weakens immunity, and leaves us emotionally depleted. But it's not just the biology. Our environment fuels it. We're surrounded by a culture of overchoice, instant news cycles, and constant comparison. Every message, every alert, every what-if is a potential seed for anxiety. Then there's the social aspect. Many of us confuse worry with care. We're taught that being responsible means anticipating trouble, preparing endlessly, and sacrificing joy for vigilance. The trap? Worry doesn't solve problems. It consumes resources, mental, emotional, and physical, to dwell on possibilities rather than opportunities. You could spend hours tonight ruminating about a career challenge, or you could fuel your mind with solutions. Worry isn't a substitute for action. It's a distraction from it. This is why the first step to freedom is understanding the patterns behind your worry. Do you notice a specific time of day when it hits? A particular event or emotion that triggers it? Common triggers include fear of failure, perfectionism, uncertainty, or feeling out of control. Ask yourself, when do my thoughts spiral? What emotions are present? What do I fear will happen if I don't control these thoughts? Answering these questions isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. Here's the good news. Worry is a habit, and habits, once understood, can be changed. The burden you're carrying isn't a part of your identity. It's a response to pain, fear, or past trauma that you've learned to manage, however imperfectly, with worry. Recognize that this habit, like any other, was formed for survival. It tried to protect you. Now it's time to ask, what would protection look like if it served my well-being instead of my fear? To begin breaking free, try this. For the next 48 hours, track your worries. When the next what-if hits, Pause and ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is this outcome so likely that it deserves my full attention? I know it sounds simple, but this act of observation is revolutionary. You're not trying to eliminate worry overnight. You're beginning to create distance between yourself and the storm. Imagine walking through a forest during a thunderstorm. You can choose to run in circles, drenched and overwhelmed, or you can step aside, find shelter, and wait for the storm to pass. This is your mind. You don't have to battle the storm alone. You have the power to create space between you and your thoughts, to recognize when a fear is valid and when it's just noise. You owe it to yourself to stop letting the burden of worry define your life. You're capable of more than anxiety. You're capable of peace, clarity, and unstoppable courage. This journey isn't about ignoring life's challenges. It's about reclaiming your energy so you can face them with confidence, not fear. Let this be your wake-up call. Worry is not your destiny. It's a pattern you can break, a cycle you can step out of. And I promise you this, with every small act of awareness, with every decision to question the noise in your head, you are already becoming the person who lives unburdened. Are you ready to begin? You've likely heard the phrase, control your thoughts, control your life. But have you ever stopped to wonder how your thoughts actually work? What happens in your brain when worry takes hold? And why does it feel so impossible to shake? This chapter is your invitation to peek behind the curtain of your mind. We're diving into the science of thought patterns, the invisible architecture that shapes your reality. And trust me, once you understand this, everything changes. Let's start with a simple truth. Your brain is not your enemy. But here's the catch. It's designed to take the shortest mental shortcut to survival, not always to truth. Think of it as a 2-million-year-old computer trying to run a modern operating system. Your brain's original programming was built to keep our ancestors alive in a world of physical threats, lions, storms, starvation. But today, those same survival instincts react to perceived threats like a missed email or a tense conversation. The result? A body and mind wired to produce anxiety in response to situations that are often harmless. Here's where cognitive distortions come in. These are the mental habits, like magnifying problems or assuming the worst, that keep worry alive. Let me give you a real-life example. Imagine someone you know, let's call him James, who's constantly anxious about failing at work. His brain, trained by years of overthinking, starts to see a boss's brief silence as proof of imminent failure. But here's the scientific twist. This isn't just being negative. It's a distortion in how the brain processes information. One of the most common distortions is catastrophizing, when your mind jumps to the worst possible outcome. Another is all-or-nothing thinking, where everything is either a success or a disaster with no middle ground. These patterns are not flaws in your character. They're the brain's way of trying to solve problems by overcomplicating them. But here's the good news. Science has uncovered a secret weapon hidden in your neurobiology, neuroplasticity. This is your brain's ability to rewire itself. For decades, we believed the brain was a static machine that lost flexibility with age. But research now shows that every time you learn something new, form a habit, or consciously choose a different reaction, you're strengthening new neural pathways. Your thoughts are not set in stone. They're malleable, like clay waiting for your hands to shape them. Let's return to James. When he first learned about cognitive distortions, he thought, okay, so I'm just thinking in a certain way. What's the fix? That's when he discovered the power of observation. He began to notice the exact moment his brain launched into catastrophizing. Like when a project deadline approached, and his mind instantly jumped to, I'll never finish this. Instead of fighting the thought, he reframed it as a habit to unravel. With practice, he trained his brain to pause and ask, is this thought serving me? Is there another way to look at this? Over time, the frantic worry that once gripped him began to soften. What's the takeaway? Your thoughts are not facts. They're patterns your brain developed, likely out of fear or habit. This is why mindfulness is such a powerful tool. When you practice simply observing your thoughts without judgment, you create space between the thought and your reaction. Imagine standing on a bridge and watching a river flow below. You don't grab the water. Your job is just to notice its current. That's how you start to recognize when a worrying thought is just a mental default, not a sign of doom. Here's where science gets even more exciting. Studies on neuroplasticity show that when you consistently challenge unhelpful thought patterns, you begin to weaken the old neural grooves that feed worry. For example, if you habitually think, "I'm useless at this," the more you replace that with, "I'm learning," that second belief starts to build new synaptic pathways. It takes time, weeks, months, because habits are forged through repetition. But the proof is in the pudding. A study from Stanford University tracked anxious individuals over 6 months using cognitive behavioral techniques to reframe distortions. Participants didn't become happy all the time, but they gained the power to step back from worry and choose a different mindset. Now, I want you to apply this to your life. Pick a recent moment when worry gripped you. Maybe it was fear about a personal goal or an imagined conflict with a loved one. Now, ask yourself, what distortion was active here? Did I overstate the negative outcome? Did I personalize something that wasn't about me? Write this down. Naming the distortion is step 1. Step 2 is replacing it with a more neutral, balanced thought. This isn't about faking optimism. It's about honesty. You see, neuroplasticity isn't a mystical process. It's your brain's natural ability to evolve when you teach it new habits. That's why action is essential. James didn't stop worrying overnight, but he stopped letting his brain's old patterns run the show. He turned into the scientist of his own mind. And so can you. Your mission this week? Catch 3 distortions in your thinking. Write down the untrue thought, then rewrite it with a more accurate alternative. Share this exercise with a friend or keep it private. The act of naming your distortions weakens their grip. When you understand the science behind worry, you stop seeing it as a reflection of who you are and start seeing it as a pattern you can study and change. Your thoughts are not your destiny. They're behaviors, habits, and signals. And just like any habit, they can be rewired. You are not broken. You are evolving. The brain that once feared every shadow can now learn to see the light. The next time your thoughts spiral, remember this. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer, the scientist, the sculptor of a mind that is, quite literally, capable of rewiring itself for peace. This is the science of freedom, and it begins the moment you choose to question your own thinking. You see, my friends, the path to inner freedom begins with one crucial truth. Our thoughts are not our enemies, but they can become dangerous when left unchecked. And right now, we're standing at the crossroads of awareness, where we must learn to spot the hidden traps that distort our minds and steal our peace. This chapter, Identifying Negative Thought Traps, is your training ground to become a detective of your own mind. Let's dive in. Think about this. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, your brain consumed by a what-if spiral so intense it felt real? What if a small mistake at work turns into a lawsuit? What if your child's cough means something far worse? Or what if your partner's silence means they've already decided to leave? These are catastrophizing thoughts, and they're not just exaggerated. They're emergencies conjured in the dark corners of your imagination. You're not alone. But here's the good news. Catastrophizing is never a fact. It's a trick of the mind that jumps to the worst possible scenario to demand your attention. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a friend who misses one important meeting at the office. Their mind immediately paints a picture of being fired, humiliated, and destitute. Sound familiar? This person might not even want to believe the worst. It simply feels automatic. But what if we stop to ask, is there another outcome I'm ignoring? What would it look like if this wasn't a crisis? Catastrophizing thrives in silence, but it withers when met with honest questions. Now let's talk about overgeneralization, the sneaky cousin of catastrophizing. Ever say things like, I'm a failure after a single setback, or nobody likes me after a conversation goes flat at a party? These are overgeneralizations. They take one event and stretch it into a lifelong truth. The problem is, this pattern isn't just unkind to you, it's illogical. Just as one success doesn't define your value, so one failure doesn't either. But your mind, if left untended, will build entire castles out of single bricks. Here's how you begin to outwit these traps. Name them. The moment you can label a thought as overgeneralization or catastrophizing, you've taken back power. Try this right now. Close your eyes for 3 seconds and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? If you notice your thoughts leaning toward doom, say aloud, there you are. catastrophizing again. Like a stubborn dog, the pattern will keep barking, but now you know it's not your human voice. Let's sharpen this with an exercise. Grab a pen and paper. Yes, actually do it. For the next 24 hours, track every time a negative thought overwhelms you. Ask. 1. What emotion am I feeling right now? Fear, panic, shame? 2. Is this thought based on facts, or is it a prediction? 3. What would this thought say differently if it were fair and balanced? For instance, if your brain shouts, "I'll never master this skill," reframe it to, "I'm still learning, and progress takes time." You're not erasing the thought. You're training your brain to notice its old, unhelpful habits. Here's a truth that will electrify your journey. Awareness is the first spark of change. Think of your mind as a garden. Weeds, like negative thought patterns, will always try to grow. But the moment you see them, you can pull them out. You don't have to wait for a perfect mindset to start. You simply plant curiosity where fear lives. And let me share something personal. For years, I believed my self-doubt was a permanent shadow. I'd catch myself overgeneralizing after a single bad phone call. I'm terrible with communication. But one day, I said, enough. I will write down the actual facts. And the facts? I'd made dozens of successful calls that month. The truth wasn't that I was a failure. It was that I was human. It was that I had one moment of nerves. That shift in perspective didn't erase the discomfort immediately, but it stopped the spiral. So my challenge to you, carry a mental compass with you. Whenever a negative thought hits, pause and ask, is this a trap or a truth? You'll miss sometimes, and that's okay. Progress isn't about perfection. It's about practice. And here's the most inspiring part. When you identify these thought traps, you begin to rewire your brain's software. Neuroscience shows that every time we choose a more balanced thought over a catastrophic one, we build new neural pathways. You're not stuck. You're becoming. Like a mountain climber scaling rock, each foothold is a choice to anchor yourself in reality. Before we close this chapter, I want you to take a deep breath and remember. The weight of these negative thought traps comes from believing them without evidence. Now you have a tool belt of questions, a method to track your patterns, and the courage to say, wait, that's not true. You are not the thoughts you have. Your mind is not a prison. And right now, as you listen, you are one step closer to claiming the freedom of your own mind. So let's move forward, together, with the confidence of someone who's already started breaking free. The next chapter awaits, and by then, you'll be even better prepared to challenge the beliefs holding you back. Stay fierce, stay curious, and remember, you are the architect of your thoughts. Welcome to Chapter 4, where we dive into the transformative power of challenging the beliefs that hold you back. You've already learned how to spot the sneaky traps of negative thinking, and now it's time to roll up your sleeves and tackle those thoughts head on. This is where the real work begins, where you shift from being a passive observer of your worries to a powerful architect of your mindset. Let me ask you this. How many times has a thought like, I'm not good enough, or everything will go wrong, made you freeze, shrink back, or abandon your goals? These are unhelpful beliefs, convictions that feel true but are rooted in fear, not fact. And here's the good news. They are not permanent. They can be questioned. They can be replaced. Your thoughts, my friend, are not your destiny. They're a map you can redraw. Let me share a story about someone who once believed they were destined to fail. Imagine a person named Alex, who woke up every morning with a chorus of inner critics shouting, "You'll mess this up. You always do." These beliefs came from a painful history, past setbacks that were amplified into a narrative of lifelong inadequacy. One day, Alex hit rock bottom. They stared at that toxic thought and asked themselves, is this even true? Is this belief helping me, or is it crippling me? That moment of self-inquiry was the spark. This is cognitive restructuring, a process of identifying, questioning, and rewriting the beliefs that distort your reality. Let's break it down. First, you must catch yourself in the act. When a harmful thought arises, say, I can't handle this. Pause. Then ask, what evidence exists that supports this belief? Write it down. Now flip it. What evidence contradicts it? For example, Alex might realize they've handled tough projects before, or maybe they've overcome adversity in ways they'd forgotten. The truth is, Unhelpful beliefs often ignore your strengths to keep you small. Here's how you reframe them. Take that same thought, "I can't handle this," and challenge it by asking, is this thought 100% factual, or is it amplification? Oftentimes, you're not dealing with a truth. You're wrestling with a catastrophic prediction. Let me give you another example. Picture someone who believes that one critical mistake will ruin their career. They imagine lawsuits, humiliation, bankruptcy. But what's the actual evidence here? Maybe they've made mistakes before and bounced back. Perhaps their boss is reasonable. The facts might look vastly different from their fears. This is where evidence-based questioning becomes your superpower. I want you to practice this right now. Ask yourself, what belief in my life is no longer serving me? Maybe it's, I'm not financially stable, my relationships will always be messy, or I'm too old to change. Take that belief and dissect it. Write it down. Now ask, is this belief based on facts, or is it a fear playing on a loop? If it's the latter, gather the facts. What have you accomplished that contradicts it? What proof exists that you've survived, thrived, and overcome, even when things looked bleak? Let's talk about how to separate facts from fears. Unhelpful beliefs blend them to trap you. Let's unravel the thread. Let's say you think, I'll never be healthy again. Now dissect it. What's the fact here? Perhaps you've struggled with an injury or illness. What's the fear? Likely, it's the story you're making up about permanence. That fear is a movie script, not a forecast. You can rewrite it by introducing a new narrative rooted in possibility. I'm recovering, and I'm taking steps toward healing. This is the essence of progress. It's not about erasing pain or pretending problems don't exist. It's about creating a relationship with your thoughts, where you hold the power to question them. Another powerful question to ask is, would I tell a friend this unhelpful thought? If you wouldn't say it to someone you love, why say it to yourself? Your thoughts deserve the same compassion you offer others. Let me leave you with a practical strategy to integrate today. I want you to create a thought challenge journal. Every time an unhelpful belief pops up, write it in the first column. Then, in the second column, list 3 pieces of evidence contradicting it. In the third, reframe the belief into a supportive, empowering thought. For instance, belief, I'm a failure. Evidence, I aced 3 projects last quarter. My boss praised my leadership skills. I've never quit on a team. Reframed thought, I'm capable of growth, and I learn from what doesn't work. Make this your ritual. Over time, you'll train your brain to default to clarity over catastrophe. You'll see your thoughts as messages, not mandates. And here's the truth you must carry forward. You do not have to believe every thought that arises. You get to choose what you feed your mind, which thoughts earn a seat at the table, and which ones are the old, unwelcoming houseguests you politely ask to leave. This chapter is your invitation to start reclaiming that power. With every belief you challenge, you loosen the grip of worry and build a fortress of resilience. The next time fear tries to whisper a limiting belief, you'll be able to stand tall and ask, is this true? Is it helpful? Or am I simply buying into a story that no longer serves me? Remember, progress isn't about perfection. It's about practice. So celebrate the small wins. Every time you swap a fear-based thought for a factual, balanced one, you're taking a step toward mastery. You're not erasing who you are. You're evolving into who you're capable of becoming. Welcome to Chapter 5, The Power of Mindful Awareness. This is where everything shifts. Up until now, we've explored how to identify the root causes of your worries, how to recognize the traps your mind sets for you, and how to challenge the stories you've told yourself for years. But now, dear friend, we step into a realm of freedom. This is where you reclaim your mind, not by fighting it, but by learning to be the witness to your thoughts. This is where mindfulness becomes your greatest ally. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, let's call him Alex, who lived in constant chaos. His mind was a storm of, what if, and why can't I, and I should have. He'd lie awake at night, replaying the mistakes he'd made, the slights people had given him, the deadlines looming over his work. By morning, he was exhausted. And yet he'd push through the day, distracted, irritable, disconnected from the people around him. Then one day, Alex stumbled into a meditation class. At first, he rolled his eyes. Sitting still? Breathing deeply? This is for people who want to grow crystals, not fix their brains. But he gave it a shot. The instructor asked the group to simply notice their breath, not to fix it, not to judge it, just to observe. In the first 10 seconds, Alex's mind screamed, "This is pointless. I can't do this. I need to get back to work." By the 3rd minute, he was already checking his phone. But he stayed. He stayed because something inside him whispered, "What if just for once you didn't run?" And slowly, as the minutes stretched, he noticed something incredible. His breath was still there. The room was still there. His body was still there. The thoughts? They kept coming, of course, but they weren't him. They were just passing cars on a highway, honking, zooming by, and he was the road. He began to realize. He didn't have to chase after every thought. He didn't have to believe every story his mind invented. He could simply watch. This, my friend, is the essence of mindful awareness. It is not about emptying your mind or achieving some mystical state of enlightenment. It is, quite literally, the art of observing your thoughts without judgment. It is the skill of anchoring yourself in the present moment, right now, in this exact breath, in this precise step you take, in this feeling of your chair beneath you. Let me say that again. This is the art of staying present, and in doing so, you disrupt the spiral of anxiety that has held you hostage for so long. Let's make this tangible. Close your eyes for just a moment. I'm not asking you to meditate for hours, yet. I'm not even asking you to clear your mind. I want you to do something far simpler. Notice your breath. Feel the air as it enters your nostrils, cool and crisp. Feel it as it moves down your throat and into your lungs, expanding your chest. Then, feel the exhale, warm and soft, releasing all the tension with it. Just for 30 seconds. Now, if your mind wandered, and it almost certainly did, that's not a failure. That is part of the practice. When you notice your thoughts pulling you away from the present, smile to yourself. Yes, actually smile. And gently bring your attention back to your breath. This is mindfulness in its purest form. But don't think this is just about moments of stillness. Bring mindfulness into your daily life. When you're walking, feel your feet connect with the ground. When you're washing dishes, notice the warmth of the water, the sound of the suds. When someone speaks to you, give them your full attention. No multitasking, no mental to-do lists. This is radical. This is liberation. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, but when my anxiety is at peak, how do I even start? I've got you. Let's do a quick exercise right now. Take out a pen and paper. Set a timer for 5 minutes. No distractions. Sit up straight, not rigid, just alert. Inhale deeply for 4 counts. Hold the breath for 4 counts. Exhale for 6 counts. Now, on the paper, write down every thought that crosses your mind. Don't filter. Don't judge. Just write. I'm worried about X. This is boring. What if I fail? When the time is up, look at your paper. What do you see? Chances are, many of those thoughts are old stories, recycled fears, or future possibilities that may never happen. Now, crumple that paper into a ball and throw it into the bin. See? You've given those thoughts power by holding on to them. But by observing them, by literally writing them out, you begin to disentangle from them. Mindfulness is not a one-time fix. It's a muscle you build with every conscious breath you take, every moment you choose to stay present. Studies show that regular practitioners of mindfulness develop a thicker prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focused attention and rational decision-making, while their amygdala, the fear center, shrinks. You are physically reshaping your brain when you practice this. But let's be clear, mindfulness is not about avoiding life's challenges. It's about meeting them with clarity instead of chaos. When you're mindful, you can still feel emotions. Anger, sadness, fear, but you don't get swept away by them. You say to yourself, here is sadness. I acknowledge it, but I am not defined by it. You say, this thought is uncomfortable, but it is temporary. You say, I am not my thoughts. I am the space in which they exist. So today, I challenge you. Begin with 1 minute. 1 minute of mindful breathing when you wake up. 1 minute when you sit down to work. 1 minute before you go to bed. Then, build that muscle. Invite curiosity into your practice. Ask yourself, what happens when I stop running from my thoughts? What wisdom is here when I stop resisting the present moment? Remember Alex, he kept showing up to that class. Not because he believed it would fix everything, but because he started to feel the weight lift. He began to notice the birdsong outside his window. He stopped driving through his lunch like a sleepwalker. And one day, he realized he hadn't spent an entire evening replaying past conversations. For once, he was simply there. That is the power of mindful awareness. That is the power you are now unlocking. You are not a slave to your mind. You are its master. Or better yet, its guest. And tonight, when your thoughts try to pull you into their endless maze, I want you to do something brave. Breathe. Watch. Stay present. And remember, your past is not a prison. Your future is not a curse. This moment, this breath, that is your kingdom. Take it back. Imagine waking up every day feeling like your thoughts are a storm you can't control. They crash over you without warning, pulling you under before you can catch your breath. You're not alone. Millions of people live their lives at the mercy of their minds, drowning in anxiety or distracted by endless worry. But today, we're going to change that. In this chapter, we'll build thought boundaries, mental guardrails that give you power over your thoughts rather than the other way around. Let me ask you this. When did you last feel truly at peace in your own mind? Chances are, it's been a while. That's why we need structure. Not to block our emotions, but to guide them, like a river with calm banks instead of a flood. And the first step? Something simple but powerful. Time boxing your worry. Here's how it works. Pick a specific time each day, say 15 minutes, where you intentionally focus on your worries. Close the door, grab a journal, and let yourself think about what's stressing you out. But here's the catch. You own that time. No stretching it, no skipping it. When the clock rings, you close the book and walk away. Sound strange? Let me share a story. A friend of mine, let's call him David, used to lie awake at night, replaying every possible catastrophe. His mind was a loop of what-ifs and if-onlys. He tried everything. Meditation, counting sheep, even listening to white noise. Nothing worked until he tried time boxing. He set aside 10 minutes each morning, right after coffee, to write down all his worries. At first, it felt awkward. He'd think, what if I miss a problem? But after 2 weeks, something shifted. He noticed that most of his anxieties never actually came true. The act of giving his mind a container quieted the chaos. Now, you might be thinking, what if I forget my worries? Don't worry. The mind is a curious thing. When you schedule time to worry, the rest of your day becomes lighter. You're not fighting your thoughts. You're guiding them into their place. Next, let's talk about scheduling reflection periods. You've set time for worry. Now schedule time for clarity. At the end of your workday, for instance, take 10 minutes to review your thoughts. Ask yourself, what did I accomplish? What am I grateful for? What does my mind need tomorrow? This isn't about being perfect. It's about creating balance. Journaling during these moments helps you transform scattered thoughts into actionable insights. This isn't just theory. Research shows that structured reflection improves emotional resilience by up to 58%. Why? Because you're not just reacting to life, you're shaping it. But what about those moments when emotions hit like a freight train? That's where our next tool comes in. Mental checkpoints. Imagine driving on a long road trip. You don't drive blindly. You check the GPS, adjust your speed, and refill the gas tank when needed. Your mind deserves the same care. Create 3 to 5 checkpoints throughout your day, maybe when you arrive at work, over your lunch break, and before bed. At each pause, ask yourself, what's my emotional state right now? Am I moving toward my goals or being pulled off track? If you're spiraling into fear or frustration, take 3 deep breaths, reset, redirect. Let me share an example. Maria, a teacher, struggled with constant irritability. Her students would notice it, and she'd feel guilty for losing patience. One day, she started using mental checkpoints. During her morning cup of tea, she paused to notice her stress. Instead of letting it simmer, she wrote it down. Over time, she realized her frustration often spiked on days when she skipped breakfast. By adjusting her routine, she reduced those emotional triggers. She wasn't suppressing her feelings. She was understanding them. You see, creating boundaries isn't about being rigid. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about choosing when to think, not letting your mind choose for you. Some of you might be thinking, easier said than done. I get it. Changes work. But consider this. You wouldn't run a marathon without training, would you? Think of these strategies as your mental endurance drills. Start small. Set one 5-minute worry box. Add a checkpoint during your commute. Over time, these habits will feel effortless. And remember, the goal isn't to control every thought, because thoughts will always come. The goal is to control when, where, and how long you spend with them. You're not a prisoner to your mind. You're its master. So today, I want you to take one action. Pick one boundary to test. Maybe time box your worry for 10 minutes tomorrow morning. Or schedule a reflection pause at lunch. When intrusive thoughts hit outside your set times, gently remind yourself, this thought will wait. I've got a better time for it. You have the power to build freedom, one structured moment at a time. And with every boundary you create, you're not just managing your thoughts, you're reclaiming your life. You've got this. Welcome to the pivotal chapter, where we confront the unseen reflexes that have dictated your thinking for years. Think of your mind as a well-worn path through a forest. It's the trail you've walked so often it's second nature. But what if that path leads straight to fear, doubt, or regret? Your automatic reactions aren't accidents. They're deeply rooted neural pathways forged by years of repetition. And here's the good news. Neuroplasticity proves your brain can forge new paths. This chapter will equip you with the tools to disrupt these patterns, journaling, role-playing, and relentless practice until your mind bends in your favor. Imagine a moment where your worst thoughts hijacked you. Maybe a self-critical voice hissed, "You'll fail like always," right before a big opportunity. That's your old wiring firing up. But what if you could catch it in the act? What if you could reframe that thought before it paralyzes you? Let me tell you about a man I'll call James. Years ago, James was a project manager who always sabotaged his confidence. Every time his team celebrated a win, his mind spun stories of being disqualified or unworthy. Sound familiar? He felt trapped, like he was the author of his suffering. Then he discovered journaling as a reprogramming tool. Every night he documented his automatic reactions and asked the question, what evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? At first it felt awkward. He'd write, "I overheard a colleague call me mediocre. Must mean I'm not cut out for leadership." Next to that thought, he'd scribble, "I've earned 3 promotions in 2 years. I mentor junior staff. My team trusts me." Over time, those contradictions became anchors. The journal didn't erase his anxiety, but it gave him leverage to question it. Here's how you do it. When a negative thought surges, pause for 3 deep breaths. That 10-second delay creates the space to interrupt the reflex. Grab your journal and write exactly what you're thinking. I'm not good enough. Everyone will see through me. Then write 2 factual counterpoints. Be brutal in your honesty. Your future self will thank you. Now let's talk about role-playing, my favorite strategy for rewiring reactions. Most of us act out our fears in the safety of our minds. We simulate failure, public humiliation, or rejection until it feels real. What if you flipped the script? Picture this. You're about to present a proposal. Your instinct whispers, you'll freeze up and embarrass yourself. Role-play a new ending. Stand in front of a mirror. Speak your lines out loud, imagining every detail. A confident posture, measured tone. Your audience nodding in agreement. Repeat this scene until your body believes it. James tried this with a particularly daunting networking event. Every time he pictured it, panic would rise. So he role-played a different outcome, himself walking into the room, laughing off small talk, finding common ground with strangers. He even practiced shaking hands and making eye contact in the mirror. The first time he attended, he still felt nervous, but the panic was quieter. The "I'm going to flounder" thought was still there, but now it had a stronger counterweight. I've rehearsed this. I can do this. This isn't fantasy. It's deliberate practice. Your brain doesn't distinguish clearly between vivid imagination and reality. The more you play the role of the calm, centered, empowered version of yourself, the more your brain begins to accept it as true. Start small. If public speaking terrifies you, practice greeting your dog with confidence. If perfectionism loops in your mind, role-play completing a task, done, not done. But here's the brutal truth. Rewiring automatic reactions demands consistency. You won't undo a lifetime of patterns in a weekend. Think of your old thoughts as a roaring hurricane. Your new habits are the slow, steady effort of building a windbreak. One morning. One journal entry. One role-played scenario. Over and over. I remember a woman named Priya who used this strategy to overcome her fear of being misunderstood. Every time she opened her mouth in meetings, she feared people would label her difficult. She started journaling her reactions. They'll think I'm uncooperative. And role-playing a better outcome. I'm advocating for our success. My insights are valid. Within weeks, she noticed her shoulders weren't hunched as much. Her voice carried more authority. People began seeking her opinion. So here's your mission. For 30 days, commit to these practices. Journal at least 3 times a week. Role-play one high-stakes scenario daily. Watch how those once automatic thoughts begin to stutter. When they resurface, greet them like old ghosts. Acknowledge their power, but remind yourself, you've outgrown them. And when you miss a day, welcome back. This is a marathon, not a sprint. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. One moment of clarity here. One breath of stillness there. Over time, these small victories compound into a mindset that's no longer at war with itself. You are not a prisoner of your thoughts, you are the sculptor. The chisel is in your hand, so pick up that chisel. Let it dismantle every fear, every loop of doubt, every outdated belief that no longer serves you. Replace it with truth. Replace it with courage. Replace it with a version of yourself you're proud to meet. This is how you rewire your mind. This is how you reclaim control. Start today. Chapter 8, Building Psychological Flexibility. You see, life is not about avoiding the storm. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Right now, I want you to imagine a tightrope stretched between 2 cliffs. That's your life. The rope sways, wobbles, and the ground beneath you doesn't care about your fear of falling. You might want to tie knots to hold it steady, paint it in straight lines, or pretend it doesn't move at all. But that rope? It's designed to bend, twist, and adjust. And so are you. This chapter is about stepping onto that rope and realizing that your strength doesn't come from clinging to control. It comes from learning how to flex. Psychological flexibility is the art of holding your values close while allowing your mind to breathe. It's about accepting discomfort without letting it dictate your choices. Think of it as the bridge between rigidity and freedom. When you're rigid, you build prisons out of your thoughts. You say, I must be perfect. I must fix everything. I must not show fear. But when you flex, you say, I am human. I stumble, but I adapt. Pain is part of growth. Let me tell you a story. I once met a person who had always lived by a single rule. If something didn't go exactly to plan, it was wasted time. This wasn't just about scheduling. It was about how they viewed life. If their child's report card wasn't a 4.0, they'd cancel weekend plans to, quote, analyze the problem. If a client didn't return an email, they'd spiral into self-doubt for days. Their mind was like a clock, every cog in place, until it wasn't. When the pandemic hit, their calendar unraveled. And suddenly, all those tightly wound thoughts crashed into chaos. They couldn't cope with the unknown because they'd spent years pretending the unknown didn't exist. But something shifted. One day, this person sat on their kitchen floor and let the fear out. They cried, not for the broken world around them, but for the world they'd built inside their own head. They realized their need for control was a mask for fear, fear of failure, fear of being flawed, fear of not being enough, and then they made a choice to start unfolding. They began small, letting their child paint on the walls, enjoying a meal without checking the clock. When a client didn't reply, they sent a light-hearted follow-up and went for a walk instead of pacing in anxiety. This is the essence of flexibility, accepting imperfection and recognizing that discomfort doesn't need to be fixed. It only needs to be felt. Now I want you to ask yourself, what is one thing you avoid because it feels too uncomfortable? Maybe it's public speaking, or letting go of a toxic relationship, or admitting that you're not the hero of every story. Here's the truth. You don't have to fix these things. You just have to show up. Let me give you a simple tool to start practicing right now. Pick a moment when you feel your thoughts clenching. Maybe it's when you miss a deadline or your partner snaps at you. Pause. Breathe. Now say out loud, or just in your head, I am experiencing insert emotion here, but I am not my thoughts. That's not just a line. It's a rebellion against the illusion that pain must be controlled. Feel it, observe it, and then choose what to do next. This is the power of self-compassion, giving yourself permission to struggle without trying to erase it. Let's get practical. Write down this mantra and use it like a mantra for a week. I am not what I do. I am not who I fear. I am the space that holds my pain, not chained by it. Repeat this when your mind tries to sell you a lie. Over time, that space between stimulus and response will grow, and from that space, flexibility is born. But here's the catch. Psychological flexibility isn't about being tough or stoic. It's not about gritting your teeth and forcing through. It's about recognizing that your mind is a muscle. Sometimes it needs stretching. Sometimes it needs rest. Imagine you're holding a bowstring. If you pull it too tight, it snaps. If you let it go limp, it's useless. The power lies in the tension just right, enough to release an arrow that moves toward what matters. What would it look like to take one of your rigid boundaries and gently soften it? Maybe stop demanding perfection in your work. Maybe stop measuring your worth by how much you achieve. Maybe start letting go of how other people should act. You can't control their behavior, only your own reaction. This isn't surrender, it's strategy. Flexibility isn't weakness. It's your brain learning to navigate without burning out. Think of a tree in a storm. If it resists the wind, it snaps. If it bends, it survives. You can be that tree. When life throws a hurricane at you, you don't have to fight every gust. You can let the wind move you, as long as your roots stay deeply connected to what truly matters. Here's your challenge. This week, find an opportunity to step into discomfort without trying to fix it. Let it be messy. Let it be awkward. Watch how your body reacts, how your thoughts churn, and how your heart still beats. Then tell yourself, I felt that. I survived. I grew. This is how you build psychological freedom, not by controlling your thoughts, but by letting them ride without becoming their prisoner. You stop chasing outcomes and start embracing the ride. You choose what action to take, regardless of how you feel. So here's your invitation. When fear knocks on your door, don't pretend you're not home. Invite it in. Ask it what it's afraid of. Thank it for trying to protect you. And then, walk through the door anyway. Not because you're fearless, but because you're learning that some of the most beautiful experiences come not from perfect control, but from daring to let go and ride the wave. You are not a machine. You are a living, breathing human being with a mind that can create both prisons and paradises. Let your prison melt into possibility. And remember, the more you move in the direction of what matters, the more you stop needing to control the storm. The wind becomes your ally, not your enemy. And that is where true strength is born. Chapter 9. Actionable Thought Management. Let's talk about turning theory into practice. You've spent time understanding the weight of worry, unraveling thought patterns, and building mental flexibility. Now is the moment to step into your power, to build habits that transform how you think every single day. This is where intention meets action, and where your mind becomes your greatest ally. The truth is, thoughts are like muscles. If you train them with purpose, they grow strong. But if you leave them untamed, they'll default to old, unhelpful routines. That's why we need concrete tools, simple, repeatable routines that become the scaffolding of your mental health. These are not just strategies. They are acts of self-command. Let's begin with your mornings. Imagine this. You wake up not to the chaos of stress, but to a moment of quiet power. Morning affirmations are more than positivity for positivity's sake. They're about programming your mind for what you choose to believe. Take 3 powerful sentences. Make them specific to your goals. Maybe one says, I meet challenges with calm clarity today. Another might be, my focus is on what I can control. Repeat them out loud, feel the words in your chest. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about setting the tone for how you relate to it. Here's a secret. The first 10 minutes of your day set the rhythm for everything that follows. Use that time to declare who you are becoming, not just what you want to achieve. I've seen this shift lives. One person told me they used to start their days drowning in fear of failure. Now, they greet themselves with courage. That is the power of intentional action. Next, let's build a tool to untangle the noise, the thought diary. Every time you notice a spiral of worry, write it down. Don't argue with it, just observe. Then ask, what evidence supports this thought? And what evidence contradicts it? This is how you expose the lies of fear. One listener discovered her recurring anxiety about being unprepared was rooted in a single outdated memory. Rewriting that story changed everything. But here's where it gets practical. Carry this diary with you. Keep it by your phone, in your bag, on your nightstand. Make it a habit to check in with yourself. Over time, you'll notice patterns. Some thoughts are one-time visitors. Others are stubborn tenants. And you, my friend, become the landlord of your mind. Now, let's address overwhelm. It's the enemy of clear thinking. That's where prioritization lists come in. At the start of your day, write down the 3 most important tasks. Not 10, not 20, 3. If you feel resistance, ask, will this task move me closer to my goals, or am I just keeping busy? One engineer I know used to drown in his to-do list every morning. Now he focuses on his top 3, and the rest? They get quietly deprioritized. He calls it the art of letting go, and it's changed his energy completely. But here's the key. Review that list at the end of your day. Celebrate what you finished. Reflect on what didn't happen. Ask yourself, what habits served me? What habits didn't? This isn't about perfection. It's about noticing how your choices create your reality. Now the final step, nightfall. Before sleep, create a ritual of reflection. Take 5 minutes to replay your day without judgment. What moments made you proud? What moments caused friction? Then, add one thing to a gratitude journal. One thing. It could be the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of a stranger, or the quiet triumph of breathing through a hard moment. This isn't about denial. It's about balance. I'll share a story that moved me deeply. A few years ago, I met a woman who was trapped in a cycle of stress. Her job was demanding. Her mind never stopped racing. She tried everything. Meditation, diets, therapy, and it helped, but the root remained. Then she decided to start small. Every morning, she wrote one affirmation. She tracked her worries in a diary. She limited her tasks. And every night, she wrote down one moment of gratitude. Within weeks, the fog lifted. Not because she stopped struggling, but because she stopped letting struggle define her. She built a system that gave her back her agency. You see, this isn't mystical. These tools are for everyone. They work not because they're complicated, but because they make the invisible visible. You start to see thoughts as choices, not as facts. You start to recognize that every moment holds a power you've been underestimating. So here's your challenge. For the next week, commit to this routine. Write your 3 affirmations. Keep a thought diary. List your priorities each morning. Reflect at night. I know what you're thinking. This will take effort. Absolutely. But let me remind you, every habit you build is a brick in the foundation of your peace of mind. The goal isn't just to have fewer bad days. It's to build a life where your mind is a sanctuary, not a battleground. And you are not just capable of this, you are already stronger than you believe. When you stand at the crossroads of fear and freedom, choose action. When old thought patterns reach out to pull you back, lean into your tools. This isn't a quick fix. It's a quiet revolution. One morning, you'll look around and realize, I've rewritten my story. And that is the power of actionable thought management. Now go. Your mind is waiting to become your greatest ally. You've made it. Chapter 10. The final leg of our journey together, but more importantly, the starting line of a lifelong pursuit. Think about how far you've come. We've uncovered the weight of worry, dismantled thought patterns that held you back, and built new neural highways that lead toward clarity, courage, and control. But let me ask you this. What happens now? When the dust settles on these lessons, how do you keep the momentum alive? Because progress isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm, a heartbeat that thrives on consistency, especially in the face of storms. Let's talk about how to sustain this transformation, not as a sprint, but as an enduring dance with your mind. Imagine a gardener planting a seed. She waters it daily, shields it from harsh winds, and nurtures it with faith in its potential. But one winter comes, and frost cracks through the soil. What would you expect? She doesn't rip out the roots in frustration. She adapts. She builds a greenhouse. That's the mindset we're cultivating. Growth isn't linear. It's not about perfection. It's about intention. Every setback is a leaf falling where you can learn from it, not a tree crumbling. Let me share a story with you. There was a middle school teacher in a small town who used every strategy we've explored. She battled crippling anxiety, which once made her dread walking into her classroom. She practiced mindful awareness to disrupt the chaos in her head, carved out thought boundaries to protect her energy, and rewired old habits by replacing self-doubt with affirmations. After 6 months, she felt more anchored. But then, her father fell ill. Suddenly, those intrusive thoughts returned, louder than ever. What if I fail my students? What if I'm not enough for my family? What did she do? She didn't throw her hands up and return to fear. Instead, she revisited the tools. She journaling her thoughts, asking herself, is this fear helping me or haunting me? She leaned on her support system, sharing her struggles with a mentor who reminded her, progress isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You revisit the same lessons, but each time you climb higher. That teacher isn't fixed. She's evolving. She celebrates small victories. One calm morning, one honest conversation, one day at a time. That's the power of psychological flexibility. You adapt, you pivot, and you keep the conversation with yourself moving forward. So here's your checklist for sustainability. First, review your gains with gratitude. Every chapter has been a brick in the bridge of your potential. Revisit those moments of clarity. When you feel off track, look at the distance already covered. One woman I know keeps a recharge journal, listing skills from each step. In hard times, she'll flip to chapter 2 on thought patterns and whisper, "You've mastered this before, master it again." Second, embrace the art of grace under pressure. Setbacks are not proof of failure. They're proof you're human. When my youngest son was born, I thought I'd mastered emotional resilience until 3 a.m. feedings turned me into a coffee-drunk, sleepless zombie. I lashed out at my partner. The guilt was visceral, but here's what changed everything. I owned it. I said, I'm losing steam, I need to breathe, then used mindfulness to recalibrate. That's the lesson. Meet your stumbles with tenderness. Treat yourself as gently as you'd console a friend. Third, build rituals that anchor you. A morning mindfulness practice? Do it. Daily affirmations? Do them aloud in the mirror until your voice trembles with conviction. One CEO I admire spends 10 minutes each lunch break visualizing success. Not grand, sweeping goals, but small steps. Speaking without hesitation. Eating a full meal. Smiling when stressed. He calls it, quote, 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 the subconscious. And his team now watches him turn doubt into drive. Fourth, create accountability with purpose. Find someone, your friend, your therapist, your coach, who will hold a mirror to your progress and remind you of your worth when you can't see it. I have a colleague who's fought depression for years. Every month, he texts his accountability partner, "Am I staying committed?" When the partner replies, "Yes," or "You're growing," it's not just validation. It's a lifeline to stay visible to himself. Finally, celebrate the tiny flames of progress. Did you pause before reacting to a provocation? That's a win. Did you breathe deeply during traffic instead of screaming at the wheel? Celebrate. I learned this from a baker in my community. After surviving a burnout crisis, she started wearing a bracelet with the words "small wins" etched into it. Every time she made it through a stressful day, she'd touch it and whisper, "You're becoming your best self." Over time, her bakery became a haven of calm, her energy radiating into her community. Here's what I want you to feel now: limitless. You are no longer at the mercy of random thoughts. You hold the conductor's baton. You've learned to recognize traps, redirect chaos, and turn pain into fuel. But here's the beauty of this. This isn't a destination. It's a journey that grows with you. The version of you reading these words will one day look back and be amazed at how much more you'll accomplish tomorrow. So take a deep breath. Let your thoughts settle. Then take one step forward, just one. Not for the applause of others, not for the illusion of perfection, but because you're choosing to stop worrying and to truly control your thoughts. You've rewritten your inner world. Now watch how the world around you transforms too. You're not just leaving this book with tools. You're leaving with a legacy in motion. Keep going. Keep growing. And remember this: every small victory is a root digging deeper. And roots don't just hold trees up, they hold entire forests together. You're becoming that force of nature. Now go create forests.